Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants. I got news for you, pal. You ain't leading but two things right now. Jack and shit. And Jack left town.
Hello, and welcome back to more Films Under Constant Critique, where we take a look at films, some good, some bad, and some downright awful. I'm Bongo Baikov, joined by our host, Maverick Drenzaria. This week, we're taking a look at the final film in the original Evil Dead trilogy, Army of Darkness.
But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor. This episode
Who's our
is
sponsor
sponsored
this
by
time?
S-Mart. Shop smart. Shop S-Mart.
You got that?
Yeah, I could not pass up that opportunity there. So, yeah, Army of Darkness. It was released it was screened at a Spanish film festival on October 9th, 1992, and then eventually a wider release in the US followed on February 19th, 1993.
Yeah. Which means that the final movie in this trilogy came out 12 years after the first movie.
That is quite a gap.
Especially when you consider that it's supposed to be like, for Ash, the events of the entire trilogy take place over the course of like a week.
A week, and he ages like 12 years.
To be fair, it was a very stressful week.
Yeah, a week like that would probably turn anybody into, yeah. And I find it interesting that the international cut was longer than the US cut, because the US cut is 81 minutes. And then the international cut is 88 minutes. And that's the one with the alternate ending.
Yeah. Which, we'll get to that at the end.
I don't know what the exact differences are between them, but I watched the theatrical cut because that was the one I could find.
Same here. Actually, so I rented this movie on Amazon Prime, and it was fantastic because it feels like it was a rip of just like a DVD or a Blu-ray, because it started with the FBI anti-piracy screen, and then there were two different Universal logos. They played the modern Universal logo and then the classic Universal logo right after it.
Nice. That's nice.
It's amazing when the Amazon Prime version of the movie just feels like a sketchy bootleg.
From what I was reading, I think the reason it might have been cut is they're trying to avoid an R rating with this one. They're like hoping maybe they could get PG-13 rating, so as a result it is less gory than the first two movies, but it ended up getting an R rating anyway. So, all for naught, apparently.
Yeah.
And this one goes a very different direction from the first two.
Yep. The first one was pure horror. The second one was a horror comedy. And this one's an action comedy with horror elements.
It feels more like a fantasy action comedy.
It kind of does, yeah.
Like, I made the joke comparing it to, like, Monty Python and the Holy Grail in an earlier podcast, but honestly, that comment still kind of stands, because there's parts of this that remind me a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And also, there's clear inspiration from, like, Jason and the Argonauts,
especially at the end of the movie.
Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court. And the Three Stooges.
Yeah, there's a lot of Three Stooges influence in this.
Now there's a combination right there. Jason and the Argonauts, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, and the Three Stooges. Oh, man. And, of course, Sam Raimi, he came back to direct. And this was an interesting turning point in his career, because I think this was his first big studio movie, one of them at least.
Yeah.
Unless you count Darkman, I guess. And he did this with Universal, like we mentioned, and this one definitely has more of a studio feel to it compared to the first two. It does.
Movies. It definitely feels like it has like a lot more to its budget. There's a lot more just like side characters. There's a lot of costumes in this one.
Battle scenes too, and sets
Yeah.
as well.
It's not just 5 people locked in like the same 3 rooms.
And unlike the first 2 movies, this one did not make its money back. It cost
Really?
$11 million, and it made $21.5 million. 11.5 of that being domestically. So it did not make its money back. So it wasn't until Spider-Man when Sam Raimi finally got, like, respect from studios, because he made, like, a string of movies in, like, the 90s. I think some of them were well received, but they just didn't make their money back, so...
I don't know if you know this, but on Wikipedia, there's actually an entire page dedicated to failed or unrealized Sam Raimi projects.
Oh, damn. Yeah.
There are so many. There's an entire Wikipedia page dedicated to it.
I wonder if it's as long as Orson Welles. No, there's no way.
It's pretty long.
I haven't seen that page, but I'll have to look at it at some point. That would be an interesting podcast to do, actually, is like just... And I thought about doing videos on them, just movies that never got made.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of interesting ones, like that Salvador Dali movie that he wanted to do with the Marx Brothers. A very weird combination there. And he even, like, gave, like, Harpo, like... a present. He gave him like this harp with like a bunch of like sharp objects on it, and I think he like threw it out after it cut his hand or something. So like, but anyway, that's getting off topic. The cast, Bruce Campbell is back, of course.
Yep.
And he plays 2 roles in this.
Yeah.
Because he plays Ash, but he also plays the evil version of Ash that grows out.
Bad Ash.
Yeah. And I didn't realize that Bruce Campbell was playing both of these characters at first, because Evil Ash is in makeup for most of it.
Yeah, he's in makeup and he obviously like changes his voice. It sounds a bit more like cartoony, but you can tell it's supposed to be like an evil version of Ash.
Like his voice honestly kind of sounds like Robbie Rotten a little bit. And I didn't realize this while watching it either. It wasn't until like later I like read that and I was like, okay, that makes that even more impressive. That he was able to play these 2 completely different characters. And other cast members. This one could afford other cast members. Wow.
I was about to say we've never covered other cast members in an Evil Dead podcast before.
I mean, these people aren't really, like, A-list actors, but they're a little bit more expensive than, like, whoever was playing, like, Cheryl or whatever.
Yeah, or Scotty.
Including Bridget Fonda, apparently.
Yeah.
Just, they're, like, names that they sound sort of vaguely familiar, but I don't really, like... I can't really think of anything they were in off the top of my head. Well, Bridget Fonda, who I think she was, Peter Fonda, yeah, that's right. Peter Fonda's daughter, apparently.
And then Ian Abercrombie's in this movie as the Wise Man.
Ian Abercrombie, yeah, that's a name that sounds familiar, but I can't think of, like...
One of his best known roles is playing Justin Pitt in Seinfeld, but he also played Chancellor Palpatine in the Star Wars The Clone Wars TV series.
That's where I would... Okay. Yeah, TV stuff, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
And Ted Raimi, he did the skeleton voices.
Yep.
And you also get a cameo by Gummo Marx. But anyway. There, now I've named all the Marx brothers on this podcast. That was one of my goals. So anyway. So, getting to initial thoughts on this one. This was actually the first of the series that I saw.
Same here. And I think we've talked about this a bit in the past, but yeah, the reason why was because I watched it and told you about how insane the movie was.
Exactly, yeah. I remember I think it was like back in like middle school or something, you kept telling me about it, and I thought it sounded hilarious. So, like, and eventually high school, I ended up seeing it, because I was just pirating a lot of movies at the time. And it's really funny revisiting it now, just having the context of the first two movies before.
Because it's such a huge tonal shift.
And I think because of that, it took me a little bit to adjust to it while I was watching it.
Yeah.
Just because the tone and style of it is, well, maybe not the style, but like the feel of it, I guess it just was so different from the first two movies.
I will say one thing that it definitely carries over from the first two movies is that it is very fast-paced.
It is still very obviously a Sam Raimi movie, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And also, the medieval setting, it kind of threw me off a little bit, and it kept making me think of Game of Thrones, because I'd watched that recently. So.
It is a very different setting compared to just a lone cabin in the woods.
Yeah, if expect like Ned Stark or like Daenerys to show up or something. Or Tyrion Lannister, but... And I'll admit, like, the first, like, third of it, I was kind of worried that I wasn't enjoying it, because, like, I don't know, I wasn't really finding some of the medieval stuff that interesting at first. But then it got to, like, the part where he's getting attacked by small clones of himself.
Okay, we'll get to that part when we get to that part, but that is my favorite scene in the movie.
And for me, that was when the movie started to pick up. I was like going, okay, now I remember why I enjoy this movie.
Yeah, it's once the movie starts to go off the rails that it becomes really enjoyable.
And then, like, the evil Ash showing up, the skeletons, I was laughing my ass off at some. But one thing I was trying to figure out was whether I liked this one more than Evil Dead 2 or not. And after rewatching, I think I prefer Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
But I do think this is a highly enjoyable movie. I'd probably say this is my second favorite of the series.
It is very enjoyable, and I'd actually... Like, if I were to recommend people only watch one movie in the series, I would honestly recommend Army of Darkness.
What? So is this your favorite movie of the podcast?
No, it's not my favorite movie, but I feel like it's just a little bit more easily accessible to most people compared to like the previous two, which were pretty, first one especially is like a pretty hardcore horror movie.
They're both, the second one especially is like incredibly bloody.
Yeah. So if people are just looking for like, a fun, good movie, this is a great one to watch, honestly.
Because I would say this is the best starting point if you're going to watch these movies is probably the second one, just because of like the tone. It's like got a good balance between the two tones, but horror and comedy. Whereas this one is just a comedy and
a comedy with minor horror elements.
Minor horror. It feels more like a fantasy movie to me, but okay. So I don't know how much of this movie we're gonna recap, but I guess.
Yeah. So the very beginning of the movie is itself a recap of Evil Dead 2, including Evil Dead 2's recap of Evil Dead 1, which is just fantastic.
I wasn't sure which clips they were using, like whether they were using clips from the second movie's recap of the anyway.
It honestly looked like they went out and shot new footage. Which is just hilarious that they would have to do that again.
Wait a second, you know what this means? This means that all three of these movies were made at different studios.
Yeah, they were.
Because the first
and
one
that's
was
why
Cinema. Second one was with Dino De Laurentiis, and then this one was with Universal.
Yeah. And that's also why getting the rights for the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV show was such a nightmare. Because when they made the first season, they had the rights to Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, but not Army of Darkness. And then the movie picks up right where, I guess not right where, but kind of where Evil Dead 2 left off, with Ash falling into the 1300s.
Yep.
And so his chainsaw and shotgun are taken away.
They basically make him a slave in the 1300s.
And then they start throwing him and other prisoners of war into this pit in the ground. Uh, the first pit scene is great because it kind of feels a bit more like that classic sort of Evil Dead horror moment where you see the first guy get thrown in. It's quiet for a while. Then you hear him scream, and a giant geyser of blood just shoots out.
And it's like really brightly colored blood too. It
Yeah.
looks so unrealistic.
It's just a fun effect, though, to see.
It is, yeah. That's like about as gory as this movie gets, actually.
Yeah, I think that is the goriest scene that we see.
And when he cuts the witch's head off with the chainsaw.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We find out what Ash's job is in this movie.
That's right. We didn't know what his job was before. He's a clerk at a
it's like a hardware
I guess a
store.
Supermarket, or yeah.
It's like a hardware store, I think.
I think it's kind of like a Kmart type. Well, okay, yeah, it is like a Kmart type, but S-Mart.
Shop Smart. Shop S-Mart.
Shop S-Mart.
Yep. Yeah, S-Mart. I have no idea what that could be referenced. And one thing I found interesting is I have seen the first season of Ash vs. Evil Dead. He works at Value Stop in that.
Yep.
And not S-Mart.
So that's actually one of those things. I mentioned earlier how they didn't have the rights to Army of Darkness for the first season. So they couldn't have him working at an S-Mart because they didn't have the rights to use S-Mart.
So I guess at some point he left S-Mart and went to work for Value Stop.
Yes.
So yeah, you get that bit of character development. Also notice they don't show the demons in the flashbacks.
Yeah, they don't. All you see is that the evil attacks Linda and then it gets into his hand.
Which again might have just been them trying to avoid the R rating or stuff like that. But yeah. And also the opening credits, they build a movie as Bruce Campbell versus Army of Darkness.
Yeah, that's very... I noticed that. That's a very weird thing.
Not Ash versus Army of Darkness.
It's
Campbell.
Bruce Campbell versus Army of Darkness.
Which makes this sound like an Abbott and Costello, like... Meet the Frankenstein or Meet the Mummy type title. Yeah, so he's in the medieval era. He ends up landing there with a car. And still has the chainsaw over the arm. And also there's this wizard guy who I think is the one played by Ian Abercrombie. He says he's the guy from the Necronomicon, like the prophecy.
So after they throw Ash into the pit, he kind of dodges this witch that's down there before the wise man throws him the chainsaw, and he basically ends the witch in just one swing by decapitating it.
Before that, though, like he gets in this fight with the witch, and it is so absurd. Like
it is such a silly fight.
It basically looks like they're in a boxing match or something. Like the like attacks feel very choreographed and cartoonish.
Like when Ash like puts his like legs around the witch's neck and throws her.
Basically, yeah. And, like Ash's expressions like are also just really over the top.
Yeah.
Also just love how there's like a wall of spikes moving towards them. It's just so ridiculous.
And it's like the slowest moving spikes ever, too. It takes so long for those things to close.
There was also one weird camera movement that I'd like to mention. That, like, the camera just moves. It quickly pans over the faces of all the people before reaching Ash.
Oh, yeah.
That was such a strange choice right there.
It feels like a Sam Raimi camera move, though.
Very, yeah. He definitely likes those over-stylized, like, camera movements, you know?
Yeah, there's like a second Deadite that's just like hiding in the wall.
Yeah, it like looks like one of the trolls from Ernest Scared Stupid, and he, like...
It actually does.
He like cuts the hand off, which ends up flying up and getting attached to some guy's face.
It like covers his mouth, too.
So there, some of the gross out humor from the second one is there.
Yeah.
Can't a guy just have a relaxing day in 1300
No,
AD?
he can't. And let's keep in mind the timeline so far. So there's that first night, which is shown in Evil Dead 1. There's that second night shown in Evil Dead 2. And now it's the morning immediately after that second night to Ash. He's been through so much at this point.
And this is also where, you're starting to get some of the medieval characters. Some of them I can't remember their names, but I think one of them is called, like, Henry the Red.
Yeah, Henry the Red is the leader of this army that is invading Lord Arthur's kingdom.
Right, yeah. Not King Arthur. Does it have anything to do with...
I think it was named with Arthur, probably as some sort of homage, but there's, like, no connections to, like, King Arthur.
It's not like he's gonna, like, start busting out and singing Camelot or something,
Yeah.
In the castles, it's only a model. But I had to include that reference in there. He punches this one guy. I don't remember his name, but it was the guy.
He punches Lord Arthur.
Okay, yeah.
In the face. Because he gets out of the pit, and he's quite obviously had enough.
Yeah.
And so he does the whole your shoelaces untied thing to Lord Arthur. Which, real quick, did they have shoelaces back in the 1300s?
I'm gonna say no on that one. Also like how the guy with the mustache, he gets his sword out of another guy's sheath by kicking him, basically.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny.
He puts, like, his foot on his shoulder, grabs the sword, and kicks him away.
That was, like, a small thing, but I thought that was so funny.
It is so funny.
And basically he tries to kill Ash, but Ash shoots his sword with his shotgun.
And then he goes on one of the greatest tangents ever known to man.
This was a pretty great monologue here.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. See this? This is my boomstick. It's a 12-gauge double-barreled Remington. S-Mart's top of the line. Shop smart. Shop S-Mart. You got that?
He explains to them what a shotgun is and where you can get it to a bunch of peasants. Like, how in the 1300s, none of them are no...
He basically just does, like, a sales pitch to all these medieval peasants while threatening them.
I guess that makes sense, because that's where he works, but, like, that's what he's supposed to do, but still, I'm like, why? So, wait, did he work at S-Mart, and then right after, like, getting off work, that's when he went to the cabin? Like,
he must have, because the outfit that he wears in both Evil Dead 2 and this movie at the beginning looks a lot like his S-Mart uniform.
Or, sorry, value stop.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then the wise man returns and tells him in order to get back to his own time, he will need to find the Necronomicon.
The Necronomicon. I wonder what that is. And then there's some crazy witch that just jumps out of nowhere and...
Yeah, she just kind of appears. We don't really know how she got in the castle.
She, like, falls back down and tries faking them out, which, of course, Ash doesn't buy, and... You get another great line here.
Yo, she-bitch. Let's go.
And this fight here is pretty funny.
Yeah, it is.
Apparently Ash has learned how to kick since the last one.
And when he finishes off the witch, he, like, puts the shotgun... He's, like, facing away from the witch, puts the shotgun up on his shoulder and fires behind him.
Yep, that's a pretty good one there. Which, that's another thing that Ash in this movie, he's basically become an action hero at this point.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I read a comment on some video, I don't remember which one, but it basically said that by the time that this movie takes place, Ash has actually gotten over the, like, toughest part of fighting a Deadite, which is the fear involved. because he's no longer afraid of these things. He's just like annoyed by them. So he knows how to take care of them, and he can get rid of them like fairly easily.
That's sort of the vibe you get. He's like lost everything basically, so he's like, nah, he just doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Which that's another thing about this movie. Ash is kind of an asshole.
Completely. So in Evil Dead 1, he felt just like a normal guy. In Evil Dead 2, he was a bit, cocky and arrogant. And he kind of acted like an asshole, but like it felt more like it was because he was stressed out. In this one, he's just an asshole.
He's just such a selfish dick in this one.
Like there's one part where this woman Sheila makes him like a quilt, and he takes it. He's like, I could use a horse blanket.
And he also kisses a girl when they met 10 minutes ago, too.
Yeah.
What? Give me some sugar, baby.
Give me some sugar, baby.
Yeah. And the whole time, he basically just wants to go back to his own time, and he just doesn't give a shit about helping any of these people,
And so then after the fight with the second witch, Ash decides that he's going to go and hunt down the Necronomicon. Just really just to help to get him back, but also the people in the castle need it.
And they tell him he has to recite Klaatu Barada Nikto to the Necronomicon, which is a Day the Earth Stood Still reference.
Which feels super weird to learn about.
Although it kind of makes sense, because that's actually the command that brings Klaatu back to life in that movie. So.
Oh, really?
But anyway, he gets chased in the forest by the camera while riding a horse.
Yeah. And I believe that's the only time in this movie that he's chased by the evil force.
I think so, yeah.
And you know what else is actually somewhat interesting about this movie? Ash only really uses the chainsaw in that opening fight against the witch and against that deadite. He doesn't really use the chainsaw after that.
You're right, yeah, I don't remember him using it during any of the skeleton battles later on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really use it all that much either in Evil Dead 2, meaning that one of his most iconic weapons isn't really used that often.
He doesn't use it until the end, because that's when he got it. That's he literally just got it, so. And once again, he's making funny expressions, he ends up falling off the horse and stumbling around like a klutz, Not only is he kind of an asshole in this movie, he's also really stupid in this movie.
He's completely idiotic.
I don't remember him being this. I guess he's kind of a klutz in the second one. He falls over a few times, but I don't remember him being this dumb.
See, I think in every single iteration, Ash gets dumber and he becomes more of an asshole.
He definitely becomes dumber and more of an asshole in the show, from what I...
Yeah, no, because I was thinking about that earlier. I'm like, he's an ass in this, but he's not quite as bad as he is in the TV show.
In the show, oh my god, he is such a prick in the show.
In the show, he accidentally brings back the Deadites by getting high and reading from the Necronomicon to impress some she's like some 20-year-old chick, right?
Yeah, something, I don't know. Oh my god. That drug trip, that was pretty funny. It's talking to his lizard and stuff.
Yeah. And he has 2 hands, so he can drink 2 beers.
But anyway, he hides in a farmhouse with a windmill and gets attacked. But once again, we're reminded of the Deadites' weakness to doors.
So yeah, it slams against the door a couple times, then it just goes away for the rest of the movie.
And he thinks he's safe, but then he ends up accidentally breaking a mirror, and...
Well, I don't think he accidentally breaks it. It looks like he tries to break it on purpose.
Why would he break it on purpose?
He has bad experiences with mirrors. Remember the mirror in the second movie?
Right. Yeah, I guess makes sense. But either way, the mirror breaks, and
a bunch of small Ash clones come out of the mirror to torment him.
Which this feels like something from like Indian in the Cupboard or something. Like they're just.
It's so goofy, but it's so funny.
It is really funny, yeah. I think they like. His like face like gets burned on a stove at one point.
Yeah, they like I forget exactly how it happens. I think they trip him somehow.
And he also bumps his head against a pipe too.
Yeah. And then there's also the one scene where he's chasing one of them down, singing "London Bridge" is falling down, and it stabs him through the foot with a nail.
That was so funny. Yeah. It also kept making me think of like Gulliver's Travels or something.
Yeah.
And also the barn setting and the pitchfork attacks. It kept making me think of Friday the 13th Part 3.
Yeah, a little bit.
Which again makes me really want to see an Ash versus Jason crossover.
I know. That would have been such a good movie.
There's also quite a lot of use of like rear screen projection during some of these scenes.
Yeah, especially the Little Ash scene, because you have to get like 4 or 5 Ashes on screen at once.
Which is interesting that Sam Raimi was using like these really old like special effects like techniques.
Yeah.
In a movie made in the 90s. Which we'll get to more of that later when we talk about the skeletons. And then all of a sudden he has an eyeball just in his shoulder. Like, what the fuck?
So what I think happened with that is he swallows one of the little Ashes, and I guess that just kind of grows inside of him.
That's right, yeah. And I think he tries to like...
he tries to like burn it with boiling water.
Boiling water, yeah. And basically the eye like grows into another head, which...
Yeah, then grows into another Ash.
Yeah, so he's got an evil version of Ash stuck to him.
And we get one of the best lines from this movie out of this
and
part.
And they're like poking each other's eyes, which
it's very much a Three Stooges.
Yeah, this whole scene felt like something the Three Stooges would do.
Yeah. And so we get one of the best lines in the movie at this part. Because, first of all, the evil Ash clone wastes no time. Ash asks him, "What are you?" And he says, "I'm bad Ash, and you're good Ash." And he does like this weird like Irish dance and punches Ash in the face a few times. And then Ash just holds up the shotgun to his face and just, essentially blows his face off, walks up to him and goes,
"Good, bad. I'm the guy with the gun."
Yeah, one of the most memorable lines from the movie.
Yeah.
There.
And then that's actually followed by what I would consider to be one of the few horror like sequences in this movie. Which is the scene where he cuts up Bad Ash's body. Just kind of with it's kind of filmed kind of dark and very moody. And then it's shown that Bad Ash is still very much alive as he's being cut into as well. Which is a little gruesome.
And I think he says, like, "What's that you got on your face?" And then throws
he's trying to bury his body parts. And Bad Ash is, like, taunting him. He's like, "You will never reach the Necronomicon." And then Ash looks at him. He's like, "Hey, you got a little something on your face." And throws a shovel full of dirt on him.
And I was also noticing the music in this one was very different.
Yeah.
From the first two. Because with this one, it seemed like they were kind of going for more of like
almost like a fantasy style soundtrack for a lot of it.
Fantasy vibe or something.
Yeah.
And it was the same guy doing the music from the first two, so that's interesting.
Really? Huh.
So anyway, they drive to the border in a van made of weed. Oh wait, wrong movie. Cheech and Chong. But anyway, he rides his horse and ends up finding the Necronomicon. Oh, wait a minute. 3 of them.
3 Necronomicons.
Yeah. Nobody
so
told
the
me
first
about 3 books. What am I supposed to do? Take all of them?
Take one of the books, take all of books.
So he doesn't know what to do, so he opens the first one and gets sucked into it.
I actually love this part because then he pulls himself out, but his face has been stretched like super far.
That was a pretty fun effect right there.
Yeah. And then the second one basically just bites him on the hand and then flies away.
The part where the book was like trying to bite him, that part killed me right there.
It's a pretty good part.
He like throws it and it flies back at him. That part was so funny. And I also like how he hesitates with the last two books and chooses the wrong one.
Yeah.
Because he thinks the more obvious one is the wrong one.
Actually, just a quick fun fact. There's this poker game called Poker Night at the Inventory 2, where one of the people you can play poker against is Ash. And if he can't, for whatever reason, ante up with like money, he will offer up the Necronomicon as something that you can win. And if you lose the match, it turns out to be the second Necronomicon that he picks up, and so it like bites you and chases you out of the casino.
I was about to say, why would you want the Necronomicon?
And actually, if you get that, you unlock an item in Team Fortress 2. You actually unlock Evil Ash's crown.
His crown?
Yeah, the Evil Ash crown. You know how he has like that skull thing on his head?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, he finally gets to the right one, but because he's an
forgotten
idiot,
the words.
He forgot what the last word he was supposed to say was.
And instead of trying to guess it, he goes, Klaatu, Barada, and just like coughs over the word.
He'd probably know this if he had seen The Day the Earth Stood Still, but anyway.
I also like how during this scene he tries to justify it. Because he just kind of looks around and goes, all right, I said the words.
That was pretty funny, yeah. It's almost like he breaks the fourth wall at some points during this movie, because he's like talking to himself a lot more and stuff. But yeah, he takes the book, lightning strikes, and of course, what happens?
He didn't say the words. So.
Yeah, graves start launching out of the ground, and we get another really funny scene where he's just running through the graveyard, and skeleton arms, they're like coming out of the ground.
And basically doing a Three Stooges routine on him.
Yeah, like, just, they're like picking his nose at one point, and slapping him, pulling on, it's just,
yeah.
Describing it doesn't do it justice, but it's really funny. And again, you see more Three Stooges, like, slapstick influence on this. He rides the horse away. The lightning also resurrected Evil Ash. But now he looks like some patched together Frankenstein experiment.
Yeah, he looks like he had been rotting for like a month or something. And like his face completely burned off, essentially.
Either that, or he could be a heavy metal singer, too. And so Ash goes back to the...
to the castle.
It's only a model. You get one use of the F-bomb.
Yeah.
But Ash says, get the fuck out of my face. And the wizard takes the Necronomicon, and he gets mad that Ash fucked up the words.
Yeah.
And they don't. Now they're mad. They're so mad they don't even want to send him back to his own time because he woke the dead.
Yeah.
And then you get another scene of Ash being, well, I guess that's every scene of this movie. It's just Ash being an asshole.
Ash being Ash, yeah.
Being an asshole. He has one interaction with Sheila, or she's like, what about all those sweet words? And he's like,
that's just what we call pillow talk, baby.
Yep. God, what a prick. And then they get attacked by some flying creature which carries Sheila away.
Yep. And so this is what kind of drives Ash to stay and to help the people fight.
And Evil Ash is now commanding a skeleton army.
And it's basically a Jason and the Argonauts skeleton army, too.
It is, yeah. It's like stop motion and stuff. It looks great. It's so fantastic.
They also, for whatever reason, have like a host of concubines that they bring in there.
I guess.
I'm not. To this day, I do not know what the purpose of the concubines in that scene was.
Necrophilia, I guess.
How? They're just bones.
And they basically want to storm the castle and get the book
Yeah.
back. And they bring Sheila to him, and apparently Evil Ash is just as much of a pervert as the real Ash, because he also says, "Give me some sugar, baby."
Give me some sugar, baby.
Kisses her. So
yeah, which somehow turns her into a deadite.
Again, necrophilia. And come to think of it, Evil Ash kind of looks like Freddy Krueger a little bit.
Kind of a little bit.
Or Darkman without the mask.
Actually, there's have you seen the new Doctor Strange yet?
No, I have not.
Do you mind if I spoil a little bit of it?
Okay. Is there like something that looks like that in the movie?
Yeah, there is.
And they consider running. Ash, he shoots his shotgun. Basically, he's trying to convince them, like, to come back
stay
and
and
fight the skeleton army. He says, "Run home and cry to mama."
Run home and cry to mama.
Which I gotta say, the lines Bruce Campbell's given, they're really stupid, but man, he does such
he delivers them so well.
He does such a good job at delivering them. And basically he's, he gets them to stay and help fight the dead army with him, you have my bow and my axe, sort of like that scene in Fellowship of the Ring. And then we get Sheila, who's turned into a deadite, basically, and this line killed me.
I may be bad, but I feel good.
Which honestly sounds like something Faye Dunaway's character from Supergirl would have said. It was so funny.
One thing that I love is the scene where Ash is kind of helping train everybody and get everybody ready for the invading army of darkness.
Oh yeah, where they're like building stuff with
chemistry.
Wait a second. How does he have a chemistry 101 textbook?
I think so. He was studying to be a mechanical engineer, which is how he can build all of this stuff. And so he just kept his textbooks in the trunk of his car.
Okay.
And so they use that to develop gunpowder.
But yeah, they're building stuff to the explosives.
Yeah. And one thing that I actually love about that gunpowder scene, if you watch, you can see one of the wise men, or one of the, I guess, magicians of the time, tries to hold the bag of gunpowder up to a candle.
Oh no.
And Ash looks genuinely frightened when he sees it and pulls his hand away.
That's pretty funny, yeah. And then he's narrating, he's saying, maybe I can stop them from getting the book. And maybe I'm a Chinese pilot.
Maybe I'm a Chinese fighter pilot.
Which honestly, Ash is so dumb in this movie, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually does think he's a Chinese pilot. And then we get one of my favorite parts of the movie, where the skeletons are marching and playing instruments, including bone and skull drums, leg flutes.
How is a skeleton blowing into a flute to play it?
I think they're using their legs or something, and
Well, no. How is he blowing into it? He doesn't have any lungs.
I don't know. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Well, how are they talking?
Okay, fair.
Yeah. But that part was it was so absurd. I was just laughing. It was so funny.
It is a wonderful part.
There's a Shakespeare reference. They say, "Let loose the dogs of war."
Dogs of war. Yeah.
They shoot explosive arrows at the skeletons. So I guess Ash took some weapons tactic advice from the Rambo movies there. And basically, you just got a big battle. The rest of this movie is basically just a battle, essentially.
Yeah.
It goes on so long, too.
And eventually, King Henry's men also come to help the fight.
Yeah, it is a pretty good battle too. It's really entertaining.
Yeah.
You get another great Bruce Campbell line delivery where you probably know which one I'm talking about.
There's a couple in this scene.
Where he says,
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
That one got me. Fire gets launched, you got explosions,
And
just
eventually,
like in the medieval era.
Ash decides he's had enough, and he gets into his Oldsmobile Delta, which he's converted into some sort of death trap with like a giant spinning blade on the top that he drives out into the crowd of skeletons to take them all out.
You're just like, how I guess Ash is just a genius at engineering or something.
Apparently.
Because he's just using this thing going all Death Race 2000 on the skeletons.
Yeah.
And the skeletons, they're done with stop motion, and it's pretty good stop motion.
It is.
It's very ambitious. Especially at this time too, like the 90s, like people weren't really doing stop motion as much anymore.
A lot of people had started to kind of move on to more modern techniques.
Because it looks kind of
it does look a little janky at points. It looks
a little stiff, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it works fine just because they're skeletons. I mean, they're gonna move in a weird way.
Yeah. And then Ash also ends up running into Deadite Sheila, which causes him to crash his Oldsmobile death trap.
Yeah.
And then we get another one of the best lines out of this sequence.
Oh, I think I know which one you're talking about.
You found me beautiful once.
Honey, you got real ugly.
Funny thing about this line, I actually used to have a soundboard on my iPod.
Yeah.
Called Movie Insults, and this line was one of them. There were a lot of good ones on there, actually. Like, a lot of like Groucho Marx quotes. A lot of ones from Full Metal Jacket were on there. That app taught me a lot of curse words.
So then Evil Ash decides that he's had enough and he's gonna march in there and take the Necronomicon himself.
This movie's starting to feel like, just you going, and then so-and-so decides that they've had enough.
This movie just moves so fast.
It does, yeah. And this fight was pretty good.
Yeah.
With Evil Ash fighting Good Ash.
And eventually Good Ash, shoves a torch into Evil Ash's face, which just kind of melts off all of his skin and turns him into a skeleton with eyeballs. And honestly, I loved that special effect, just how the whole thing looks.
It was a pretty good effect, yeah. There was this one line in there too when Evil Ash climbs over the wall again. He says, "I got a bone to pick.
A bone to pick with you."
The delivery of that it's such a stupid line, but I was laughing so. I also like how the skeletons in this can kick, Yeah. You don't usually see skeletons kicking while they're fighting, so that was pretty funny. And he finally kills Evil Ash he lands on a catapult, which explodes and goes off. He gets thrown up into the air.
Yeah, and basically erupts into a giant firework.
I love that shot too, and just the scream that Evil Ash is like.
and before he gets launched too, there's a train whistle sound that plays, and the top of his head comes off.
It's so funny. There's a lot of weird. Now that I think about it, there's a lot of sound effects in this movie.
Yeah,
cartoon sound effects, which
especially in that final battle scene.
And so now the two groups that you don't really care about, they're back on good terms with each other, apparently.
Yeah.
That was one of the weaker parts of the movie, I thought, was the supporting cast,
Yeah. It had a bigger supporting cast, but they didn't really do much.
No, they really didn't.
It was this is a Bruce Campbell movie.
That was kind of why the beginning of this movie, it was a little bit boring to me, just because, it's focusing on all these, supporting characters, and then finally, Ash, he goes off on his own, then it picks up,
Yeah.
I like how the two best actors in this are Bruce Campbell and Bruce Campbell. So he finally goes back to his own time.
Well, real quick. So the wise man makes him a potion that can send him back to his own time, and he tells him, before you drink this, you need to say the words Klaatu Barada Nikto in order to properly be sent back to your own time. And so then it just kind of flashes forward to the present where Ash is telling a worker the story of presumably all 3 movies.
So, wait, he's just been talking during his whole shift about what happened. Like, what?
Yeah.
And this guy's probably listening and just going, what in the fuck are you talking about?
And did you notice that guy was played by Ted Raimi?
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. I knew Ted Raimi did, like, the voices for the skeletons, but... And the guy asks him if he said the words right, and he says, okay, maybe I didn't say...
Maybe not every single little syllable.
Yeah. And a demon shows up in the store.
And so Ash has had enough at this point. He grabs a gun from the display case with his mechanical hand that he still has.
Yeah, he says, lady, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave the store.
Who the hell are you?
Name's Ash. Housewares. Which, again, these are such, like, mundane lines, but he delivers them so
The delivery
well.
just is perfect. And so they end up getting into...
There's not very many people that would be able to make a line like, name's Ash, housewares.
Housewares sound awesome. We also end up getting a repeat line a little bit later from the Deadite, where she says, I'll swallow your soul.
Yeah, which was in the second one.
Yeah. Which Ash responds to this time with, come get some.
Come get some. And he ends up just unloading a bunch of bullets into it. He flips the gun up in the air for no reason.
Hops on a cart, moves forward, catches it, and fires like 20 rounds from a shotgun that looks like it has 1 or 2 bullets max.
There's like no reason for him to do that either, yeah.
Why is this gun loaded if it's behind a display case at a store?
He's got the endless bullets cheat code that most action heroes get in these kinds of movies. Or
and so
he's been taking military advice tactics from Rambo, so...
And so after taking out the final Deadite, he grabs a female co-worker, spins her around once, and says, hail to the king, baby.
Yeah.
They make out, and then that is the end of the Evil Dead trilogy.
What would have made me laugh is if they ended this with Ash trapped in the cabin again.
They send him back to the future, and he wakes up in the cabin.
Just like bring it full circle and like have it be so he's Sisyphus and the cabin is his boulder.
That would be so funny.
But although speaking of that, there is an alternate ending to this movie.
Yep.
I think in the international cuts all had this ending, but the theatrical, the one we were just talking about, that's in the US version. The alternate ending, in this one, what happens is he has to take 6 drops of the potion, but he ends up taking too much.
Yep, he drinks 7 instead of 6.
So he ends up falling asleep. And during this time, he apparently grew a beard and like mustache, so he kind of looks like a caveman a bit. He just fell asleep for so long. I guess he turned into Rip Van Winkle or something. So because he wakes up, everything's been destroyed because he slept too long. And
yeah, and so it's like a post-apocalyptic world that he wakes up in. I'm
not gonna lie, I kind of wish they'd gone this direction and had like Ash in the post-apocalypse.
So I'll be real. I do prefer the original one.
Which one?
Or the one that was in the theatrical cut.
It's more entertaining, I think.
And I feel like it's just a nicer end to have Ash like get some closure and for his life to go back to kind of normal.
It's a more fitting ending for this type of movie because the tone of this movie is so goofy, whereas you end on this really dark ending and you're just like,
it's a bummer to end on that.
Although if they had done a follow-up, I still am kind of curious what would have happened if they'd done like a post-apocalyptic Evil Dead movie.
So do you want to hear something that you might find interesting?
Right.
Do you mind if I spoil future seasons of Ash vs. Evil Dead?
I don't even know if I'm going to watch it, to be honest.
Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and spoil the season 3 ending.
Because I've only seen the first season, and I just kind of lost interest after that. But
So real quick, in some interviews, Bruce Campbell said that they planned for 5 seasons, but the show got canceled after 3.
So there was a cliffhanger ending.
Yep. And so the ending of season 3 involves Ash being put to sleep, kind of like this movie, and he wakes up in a post-apocalyptic world that looks a bit like the Mad Max world. And so presumably season 4 would have been a post-apocalyptic Evil Dead show.
Except instead of the Lord Humongous, you have skeletons on like bikes and like cars and stuff.
And I will say, after seeing that teaser at the end of season 3, I'm honestly pretty sad that the show got canceled and we didn't get this season 4.
That would have been really funny. But that's Army of Darkness, the final film of the trilogy.
And it's a very interesting end to a horror trilogy.
We started off with horror and ended with comedy, I guess.
Yep.
I guess Ash's life starts off horrifying and then becomes more lighthearted as it goes.
Yeah. So. Again, it's a very stressful week for this man.
He lost, like, literally everything in, like, the span of, like, a day. I've kind of said what I think of this movie. It's where it took a little bit for me to get used to the tone, but once I settled in, it was incredibly fun to watch.
Yeah, no, it is a very fun movie. And I've also found that this is a great movie to watch with friends, just because it's just a good time.
I think my favorite part of this movie actually is just the skeletons.
Yeah, no, the skeletons are pretty great.
They're pretty funny. And also Evil Ash. Evil Ash is pretty funny too.
Yeah.
It was just so strange watching it and seeing them go the route of having it be more of a fantasy film with comedy and horror elements.
So, you know how it's possible to, like, cut all 3 movies together into one movie?
That would not make any sense.
This would be so jarring.
This tone switches with each movie.
I mean, with Evil Dead to Evil Dead 2, it would be a little weird, but, like, it was still, horror was the base. Going Evil Dead 2 to Army of Darkness would feel so weird.
Evil Dead 2, I guess, is kind of a bridge between the first and the third movies, where it has comedy and horror, so...
Yeah.
And it's especially funny that this is the first one I saw, too.
Because it sets the wrong expectations for the other 2 movies.
It is such an odd tonal shift. Bruce Campbell, of course, he's entertaining, like always, And also, just the fact he played both the main villain and the main protagonist is pretty funny, too.
Yeah, and he does a good job doing both.
Yeah, like I said, I never would have guessed that was Bruce Campbell under that makeup, because he doesn't look or sound like Bruce Campbell at all.
Yeah.
And the effects are enjoyable. Really, the only problem I would say I have with this movie is just some of the supporting cast, like some of the supporting characters, because they're just really not doing much. They're playing it so serious.
They are.
They're, like, all doing, like... It feels like Ash just ended up in this super serious, like, medieval movie. I guess the medieval characters, they're the straight men to Ash's goofy antics, and then you got all these ridiculous skeletons and stuff. You don't even... Then that's another thing. The first two movies had demons, as the main villains.
Yeah.
And they possess people and stuff. This one just has an army of stop-motion skeletons. So already that, makes it feel very different from the first two.
I think overall, I know earlier you mentioned that this was, your second favorite, right after Evil Dead 2.
It's, my second favorite after Evil Dead 2.
I honestly don't know how I would compare it to the rest of the series.
Just because I do think different. I had to think about it. I had to think about it a bit because I already knew while watching it I wasn't enjoying it as much as the second one because I had pretty high expectations. But I was trying to figure out if I liked it more or less than the first one. But I do think
that's what I'm stuck on.
I do like this more than the first one just because... I don't know. I just like those goddamn skeletons. And Ash, this is Bruce. This is one of Bruce Campbell's.
Oh yeah, no. This is one of the best Ash performances that he's given.
He's so funny in this,
I think I would definitely put Evil Dead 2 at the top. I think I'd put Evil Dead 2 at the top, but I honestly don't know how I would compare it to Evil Dead 1. Just because they're such different movies. It feels like it's hard.
They are, yeah.
To choose which one.
Opposite ends of the scale,
I think I find Evil Dead 1 to be a better movie. But that's not going to be something that I watch a lot or watch if I want to feel good. I feel like this movie has a lot more rewatchability than the first one.
So it's a very different...
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to compare.
Yeah.
It's a funnier movie. It's more quotable. I think...
And usually when people think of Ash, they think of this Ash.
Another thing also is the huge discrepancy in budgets. Because think about the first one. The first one was made basically just guerrilla style in the woods. And this one was made with Universal Studios.
Yeah. So that actually does make me wonder how much studio interference was there with this movie? Because there had to be some.
Quite a bit, I'm assuming. Just to the lower levels of violence compared to the first two.
Yeah.
It's way less gory than the first two, Because they were trying to get a PG-13 rating, but they don't quite manage that.
Yeah.
Just because of two parts, the decapitation and the blood shooting out at one point.
Yeah.
It's mild compared to the first two, but that's still R-rated stuff right there.
Yeah.
I mean, the first two, they didn't get R ratings for those. They got X ratings.
Yeah. And so, at the very least, I guess from Universal's perspective, it probably did reach a somewhat wider audience than an X-rated film would.
Yeah, I mean, generally when people are thinking of, Bruce Campbell as Ash, this is the performance they're thinking of.
Exactly.
I mean, I guess some people, they might be thinking of Evil Dead 2, but generally when people are quoting, they're quoting stuff from this movie. Because to be fair, this is the most quotable of the series. I mean, by far. It's got the most memorable lines from it. Because I guess the second one has groovy.
Yeah.
And then the first one, I don't really remember most of the lines from that. Oh, this one also, he says groovy in this one, so
yeah,
you get a repeat of his famous catchphrase. And it was also weird watching this because the most recent thing I'd seen with a fantasy setting this movie was Game of Thrones, and this is worlds apart.
Yeah, it's very, very different.
Very different tone, very different just everything basically.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, I'd say it's a very good movie.
It's very enjoyable.
It's very enjoyable.
It's very entertaining. It's very much a Sam Raimi movie.
Yeah.
And again, I don't quite like it as much as the second one, but I would say this is my second favorite of the series, which I think that was part of what kind of hurt it rewatching it, was just having such high expectations after watching the second one again.
Yeah.
But I still really enjoyed it. It's still a pretty fun movie to watch. Let me guess, it's your favorite movie of the podcast.
No, I still think Evil Dead 2 is my favorite movie we've done.
But this is up there for you, of course.
It's definitely up there.
Because you said the first one was your favorite of the podcast before we did Evil Dead 2, and then now that's your favorite of the podcast. I guess unless you have anything else to say, we can move on to trivia.
I think I'm good for the trivia.
What do you want to guess your friend gave it?
I'm gonna give the score that I want him to give it, and then the score that I think he actually gave it. I think he should give it 3 stars, but I'm expecting a 2.5 or lower.
Leonard Maltin, in his movie guide, gave it 2 out of 4 stars.
Of course.
He praised Bruce Campbell's performance and said there were a few witty bits, but thought that doldrums set in when nifty special effects and verbal exchanges are out grabbing a smoke.
Well, that's an interesting review.
Which I can kind of see that, because some of the medieval stuff is kind of... And again, apparently it's not as good as...
That's Batman Forever. I cannot believe how highly rated that movie is.
It also got 2 thumbs down from Siskel and Ebert.
Really?
Yeah. Ebert felt it was not as good as the second one, feeling it recycled too much. Which there's a few, like, gags, I guess, that are, like, kind of similar to the second one.
Yeah.
Although, again, the tone and stuff, it feels the setting is so different from the first two.
It's basically a completely different movie.
Oh, well, I'll get to that anyway. And they did both praise the special effects. And if I remember right, I think they did have nice things to say about Bruce Campbell, at least.
Yeah.
One thing I think is kind of amusing is the working title for this movie was originally Medieval Dead.
That would have been an interesting title to go with.
I'm not gonna lie, I actually kind of wish they'd gone with that title.
Yeah.
It is stupid, but I think it fits.
Yeah. It definitely fits with the tone of the movie.
They also called it Evil Dead 3 Army of Darkness.
And then in the title screen, it was Bruce Campbell versus the Army of Darkness.
But I guess they changed it to just Army of Darkness, because they wanted
a lot of names for the same movie.
They wanted to stand on its own. One thing I forgot to mention is I really like the tagline for this movie.
Yeah.
It's trapped in time, surrounded by evil, low on gas. And that was for the US release. The international one, it's not as good. It just says the tagline for that one was, "How can you destroy an army that's already dead?"
Yeah, the US tagline's better. So I know you've seen that movie poster that's in my parents' basement, where it's just a collage of different movie covers.
Army of Darkness is on there, right?
Yep.
Bruce Campbell ended up in the hospital after being injured during a stunt. The doctor at first couldn't tell which cut was real because of all the fake cuts on his face.
That's impressive for the prop department. Or I guess the makeup department.
That's so funny. Which I think you mentioned something like that in another podcast.
I feel like I did. Like, I feel like I mentioned it, but I didn't remember what movie it was for.
Yeah, and I guess it was this movie.
Huh.
So that was interesting to find right there.
Yeah.
And one thing I was reading about this movie was how difficult the fight choreography was for Bruce Campbell in the movie.
See that.
Apparently they had a number system for it. And he was often fighting things that weren't actually there.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be very difficult to do.
Yeah. Tracy Lords did not get a part in the movie, but she did audition for this movie and later appeared with Bruce Campbell in the show Hercules: The Legendary Journeys.
Huh. Wasn't that like a Xena spinoff or something?
Xena was a spinoff of that show, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. With Kevin Sorbo. Kevin Disappointed Sorbo. There were plans after the remake of Evil Dead to do a film called Army of Darkness 2. The movie never got made, but instead we got the show Ash vs. Evil Dead, which, you know,
is essentially an Army of Darkness too.
it had the involvement of Bruce Campbell, Sam, and Ted Raimi, and even the composer for the first 3 movies. I noticed while looking at the Wikipedia page, there were like some comics released that were sequels to this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of Army of Darkness sequel comics.
Including one called Army of Darkness versus Reanimator.
There's a I think it was called Ash versus the Marvel Zombies.
That's on there, yeah. Freddy versus Jason versus Ash.
And actually, Freddy versus Jason versus Ash had a sequel comic series, which I think was actually called The Nightmare Warriors, funnily enough.
Yeah. Army of Darkness / Xena Warrior Princess. Why not? Was the one. Oh my god, these titles are so funny.
So actually, one thing that I do want to bring up real quick about Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, the Nightmare Warriors. Ash basically goes and collects all of the living survivors from the different Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street movies to fight Freddy and Jason. And so Tommy Jarvis goes to try to kill Jason again, but it's trying to incorporate all of the Friday the 13th movies that have been released up to that point.
Yeah.
And if you remember in Jason Goes to Hell, only a Voorhees can kill a Voorhees. And so Jason basically wipes the floor with Tommy Jarvis before Jason's half sister steps in and kills him instead.
What'd be funny is if they actually made a Freddy versus Jason versus Ash movie and they brought Corey Feldman back.
That would actually be great.
As Tommy Jarvis. Apparently, Bruce Campbell was displeased with the studio's delayed release of the film and its re-editing of it. He stated he wasted a year of his life waiting for the film to get released to cinemas.
Yeah, that would feel frustrating.
Which I don't know how different the director's cut is to the theatrical cut at all, aside from the ending, so I don't know what else they changed exactly. Maybe there's more character development for the supporting cast, who knows? All 3 Evil Dead films can be seamlessly cut together, which has been done by fans, through some introductory footage in the sequels. Though some introductory footage in the sequels is lost.
And it gives you the most tonally jarring movie you'll ever watch in your life.
How long would it take to watch,
So each one's like an hour and a half, right?
Let me look. Okay, the first one was 85 minutes, the second one was 84 minutes, and then the third one's 81 minutes. Let me add that up.
So that's 250 minutes.
Which is 4 hours, and holy shit.
Oh, wow, yeah, that's like 4 hours and 20 minutes long.
Oh, God. I would have to take a break after watching Evil Dead 2. That's what I did after watching Evil Dead 2. I was, watching it, and, I was thinking, maybe I'll watch something out of this, but I'm like, God, this was such a roller coaster ride. I kind of need a break. Because every movie I try watching after this is gonna feel slow as hell. In the original draft, Ash lost an eye.
That would be interesting.
Oh, here's a great one. Released in Japan as Captain Supermarket.
What?
Which I guess is the poster for that I put in there in the chat.
What?
I guess it's called Captain Supermarket.
Captain Supermarket. Is that why there's like cans of soup that say Bruce Campbell on them?
I guess.
Why is Ash saying "Give me some sugar, baby" on the poster? Why is the poster so colorful, but Ash is drawn in a realistic style?
They took the poster and I guess pasted it on to some other stuff. This looks like fucking like that Andy Warhol.
It does.
With like the soup cans and stuff. That's interesting. Sam Raimi, he originally wanted to call the film The Medieval Dead, but Universal Pictures refused. Although apparently the UK release called it Army of Darkness, The Medieval Dead.
Huh. So it was like a subtitle then.
During the scene where Ash is being pelted with rocks, fake rocks were used, but to get a more realistic reaction out of Bruce Campbell, and partially as a prank, director Sam Raimi pelted him with potatoes.
I've heard that's the thing Sam Raimi does a lot to his actors.
He likes fucking with them, I guess.
Yeah, like in the first Spider-Man movie when someone hits Peter in the head with a backpack, that was Sam Raimi walking past him, hitting him in the head with it.
Is that at the beginning of the movie where he's on the school bus?
I think it's when he's like walking around like the campus.
Or when he's okay. Huh.
Or like walking into the school building.
I'd have to rewatch it, I guess. During filming, it's just a lot of people hit him in that movie, so to be fair. For all I know, Sam Raimi played Flash Thompson in that movie. There's so many different cuts of this movie. That's one thing. It's like, there's the U.S. theatrical cut, the European cut, the director's cut, and then the TV cut of the movie.
Here's a little fact you might find interesting. S-Mart is an actual chain of grocery stores in Mexico.
In Mexico? Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, in Mexico.
S-Mart.
Let's go shopping with my lack of being able to read Spanish.
I know a little bit of Spanish, but I don't know how far I'd be able to get us.
I think I can interpret some of this. 3 días de frutas y verduras. I'm going to guess that's 3 days of fruit and vegetables.
Where are you seeing this?
On their website.
So I'm looking at the website. I'm trying to see like.
That is an ad. My eyes hurt looking at this one.
Oh my god.
Graphic design is my passion.
There's a lot of graphics going on here.
I forgot for a second that these aren't dollars. I was about to ask why are the paper towels $96?
It's like pesos.
Yeah. What is the going rate between pesos and dollars?
I don't know actually.
Oh, it's like nothing. Yeah, 96 pesos is about $4.80.
Some melons, papaya. Ooh. Some of this.
Oh, that's some really cheap meat then. Hold on, that's 37. 37 pesos. What? I wanted to buy my meat for $1.86.
Watermelon, there's potatoes. What? And who's this guy down here?
He looks like he's having a good time.
Unfortunately, I don't remember enough Spanish to be able to translate some of this.
I never learned Spanish, so this is all foreign to me.
You learned German, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I took Spanish class.
No, I do not want S-Mart to know my location.
Why not? I guess Ash works in Mexico is what we're learning.
Apparently.
All this is doing is just making me hungry for fruit. Fuck you, ads. Yeah, why are there... So I guess the director's cut is different from the European version?
Mm-hmm. Because from what it looks like, the European version is based on the director's cut, and they just, like, trimmed away stuff.
That's so weird. Is that the one that's called, like, the Screwhead edition?
It might be.
First and last studio film Bruce Campbell starred in as the lead.
Huh.
Yeah, because he's been in studio films, but more as, like, supporting...
Secondary, yeah.
Yeah. All that because of Workshed. The entire sequence when evil Ash grows out of Ash's shoulder starting with an eye is an homage to the Japanese-American B-horror film Manster.
I read that piece of trivia and I actually looked up the scene, and yeah, I can see it.
The original script was 43 pages.
That seems short.
To be fair, a lot of the movie is just a huge skeleton battle.
Fair.
And it moves incredibly fast.
What size do you think the script of Fury Road was?
Tom Hardy has, what, like 2 lines in that movie?
And apparently it's 500 pages.
The Fury Road script?
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Oh, this is weird. They incorporated the storyboard into the script. So it's like a weird graphic novel almost.
Okay.
It's actually kind of cool.
Oh, okay. They cut the original ending because it didn't test well with, like, test audiences. Apparently it was deemed too depressing.
Mm-hmm.
So Universal wanted a new ending, which was more heroic and involved a shootout at the S-Mart. Yeah.
Yeah, I still think that changing the ending was the right choice.
It does make you wonder, though. Post-apocalyptic Ash. I guess he was already on his way to becoming Max from the Mad Max movies, so...
Yeah.
It kind of goes through a similar arc there. Oh my god, okay. The alternate ending, which Ash wakes up in a post-apocalyptic future, was written so Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell could set the stage for an Evil Dead 4 set in a post-apocalyptic future where Ash leads robots against the Deadites.
Huh. Yeah, that would have been a movie.
But due to the film bombing at the box office and Universal Pictures, they didn't like the ending, so it got abandoned. Damn. And apparently Ash does say the words right. According to this. Like, he says them correctly. You just can't make out what he's saying because of the coughing.
Huh.
So I guess either the coughing threw him off, or no matter what, whether he said them right or not, he fucks it up.
They couldn't hear the right word over the coughing.
Klaatu Barada. So, okay, I guess remember to shop smart. Shop S-Mart.
Shop S-Mart.
Yeah. Which apparently you can, because it...
If you live in Mexico.
Wait a second. Let me see. What's the Spanish translation for shop smart? Shop S-Mart.
I'm gonna find my nearest S-Mart. Oh, there's an S-Mart not too far away, from the border between New Mexico, Texas, and Mexico.
Compra inteligente, tienda S-Mart. I don't really know what else to say about this one. I guess just it's a pretty fun movie.
Yeah, it's enjoyable. It's very enjoyable. I watched this movie while grilling. I would highly recommend.
While grilling the food you bought from S-Mart.
Yes. My chicken breasts that I purchased from S-Mart, I went down to Mexico for those. I'm a menace to the to the earth. All right, well, I guess with that, next time we will cover Willow.
Best movie directed by Ron Howard. Obviously. Yeah, play the Andy Griffith clip.
Good night, you stupid idiot. Good night, you miserable slob.